I was able to stack up 27,035 points for Damage Bastions during an electromagnetic storm on Spaceport. You can also use this exact same strategy during an electromagnetic storm on Damn Battlegrounds as well. I'm going to give you the steps for Spaceport and then give you a high level overview of what to do on Damn Battlegrounds at the end of the video. Now for your equipment, you're going to need to pack a ton of deadlines. If you don't have the deadline blueprint, I'm going to put where you can find it in the back of the video, but up front it is in the cultural archives. You can just simply go in and loot it a few times, and I've got it to pop pretty frequently within that area, but I'll show you a video at the end just to give you a better idea of where I found mine. In total, I brought 8 deadlines with the intent to eliminate 8 total bastions if I managed to get the spawns, but only ended up getting 6 total spawns in this match. On top of that, I brought a Hullcracker with 4 stacks of ammo, an anvil with 3 stacks of ammo, a couple of light shields, a couple of healing items and shielding items, as well as 6 stacks of adrenaline shots, a few zip lines, snap hook, and then most importantly, the photoelectric cloak. Now once you spawn in, you want to head for one of the 2 locations that Bastion will spawn during an electromagnetic storm. The Bastions spawn in near the control tower and underneath the trench towers. Once you make it to the area, the first thing you need to do is clear it out of all of the smaller enemies, especially the comets. If you don't take out the comets first, they will find their way to you as you're fighting the Bastion, and they will take you out super quick. So make sure you clear them out at first. Additionally, Rocketeers do like to patrol near the Bastions, so part of this is a waiting game and letting the Rocketeers clear the area first before you engage the Bastion. Now, once all of those things have happened, you essentially want to pull Bastion to you and try and pull it away from where all the other enemies are. You need to be behind a very large object that will protect you from the Bastion's Gatling gun barrage. Getting caught out by this attack for only a second is enough to take you down. It is extremely strong and powerful, so you need to be super careful when fighting Bastions. Now the goal here is to use the Hullcracker and cheese the angle on the cover object that you're using. Try and focus your shots onto a single leg, but don't do too many shots while the Bastion is further away from you. You want to let the Bastion get as close to you as possible before you detonate the leg. After a few shots, the leg will explode. You'll see a bunch of fire spew out when it does, and the Bastion becomes immobilized for 10 full seconds. You need to immediately sprint and jump onto the Bastion and pull out your deadline to plant it on top of the Bastion. You want to try and place the deadline in the center of its head, as this will ensure that it gets one-shotted once the deadline goes off. Once you've planted the deadline, you need to get yourself back to safety and make sure your body is fully covered by the large object, because the deadline will take you out if you're within range of it. Now, other things to think about as you are doing this is sometimes you're not going to mantle up super quick, or sometimes the run is a little bit too far. In these cases, you just need to get yourself back to safety and immobilize Bastion again by taking out another leg. Additionally, if you try and plant the deadline on the side of it instead of jumping on top, the Bastion will wiggle around while it's immobilized, and it can break the planting animation, and if you break the plant animation twice, you need to get back to safety. At that point, you've used too much time and the Bastion's about to get back up, so you need to run back to safety and just immobilize it again by taking out another leg. Now, I've done this trial since Season 1, and I've taken out a ton of Bastions along the way, and never once have I ran into a Bastion like I did during the second Bastion in this round. The next Bastion that I fought essentially was a Terminator Bastion. For whatever reason, when I took out its legs, it did not become immobilized, and it stayed up and continued to attack like normal. When it did this after the first leg, I assumed it was just a glitch and a bug, so I continued on with the fight as normal. When I saw the second leg explode, I figured I was good, and just out of muscle memory, I sprinted out to place a deadline on it. Since the Bastion didn't go down, it was charging up its Gatling gun, it destroyed me instantly and I went down. Thinking my run was over, out of nowhere, an absolute hero comes up from above, jumps down and defibs me to save my entire run. I can't thank this raider enough for being an absolute legend and doing that for me. Now keep in mind, the Bastions will respawn roughly about 7 minutes after you've taken them out. So the idea is you want to try and be as fast as possible up front with taking the Bastions out. The sooner you eliminate them, the sooner they'll respawn, and the more points that you can stack up. Now in theory, I think you can get 7 to 8 Bastions, the 8th being a major stretch, but 7 is realistic if you're able to eliminate the first and second sets of Bastions super quick. It will take you being absolutely dialed in and everything going your way, but 6 Bastions is totally reasonable for most players who follow this strategy. But what about if you don't have the deadline blueprint, or you just don't want to play that style of game? You can still rely on the Hullcracker to do the heavy lifting and take out the Bastion, But just keep in mind that Hullcrackering an entire Bastion does take time. But it is a way that you could go about doing this, but I would guess if you use strictly the Hullcracker for the entire round, you're probably looking at 5 Bastions total, maybe 6 if you're lucky. Now there's something you're going to want to look out for while you're doing this to ensure you protect the high value of your bag and you don't waste deadlines during rounds where Bastions aren't respawning as quick. Now I cannot say that this is 100% a guaranteed thing, but I tried the Bastion trial again last night during a damn Battlegrounds run. When I got to the Hydrodomes in the beginning of the match, the Bastion hadn't spawned in yet, and it took it about 4 minutes after the start of the match to actually spawn in. And then throughout the rest of that entire game, both the Bastions took much longer to respawn than normal, and I was only able to get 4 Bastions during that run. So my recommendation is if you spawn into a game and you get to the Bastion early and it's not there, go ahead and leave that match and re-queue. As long as the Bastion is on the ground at 29 or 28 minutes in the beginning of the match, you're pretty good to go overall based on the respawn times that it takes to get throughout the match. But just keep in mind that that RNG plays a role here. Sometimes the Bastions spawn in slow, sometimes they just don't spawn at all, and you have to be aware of that as you're doing this. So even if you rotate after eliminating the first one to go do the second one and it's just not there, it's better to just exfil at that point, take the loss on the materials that you use for the single Bastion, restock back in Speranza, and then re-queue and try again. Now the trick here to being in control of the Bastion trial overall is you want to get the first 2 eliminations as quick as possible. So after you take out the first Bastion, you want to use zip lines and adrenaline shots to get yourself to the second Bastion as fast as possible, and take it out quickly as well. In general, if other raiders are coming in to do this trial, if they see the first 2 Bastions are already eliminated, they just give up on that trial because you can't set as high as points at that point anyway. So it generally will give you control of the map and control of the Bastion respawn so you can run the rest of the trial out the way you need to for that game. Now beyond that, there isn't a ton more to this specific challenge. You just need to continue to repeat the steps of the first 2 Bastions until the end of the match and then get yourself back to Speranza safely. Now, as promised at the beginning of the video, if you don't have the deadline blueprint, I find them in the cultural archives on Stellamontes. This is one of my favorite areas to farm for basic materials and even some trinkets to sell off and stack up my money. But throughout that, what I'll find in this area regularly are Seeker blueprints, Trailblazer blueprints, and Deadline blueprints. Those are all regulars that I find throughout my Stellamontes runs. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to get it during your first or second run, like it takes a few times to get the blueprints to pop, but doing it multiple times in a row, you will get a deadline blueprint in that area eventually. It is a spawn for that specific blueprint, so you will get it there as long as you just keep trying it. Now, while in this example that I'm giving you, the deadline blueprints pop while I'm inside of a key room, keep in mind that most of the time, you just need to be looting the wooden crates in the cultural archive space itself. That's where I see the deadline blueprint pop often, and any container within this space has a chance of popping it. You can even find it in the desk drawers at the front of the cultural archives that's not inside a key room. This video is just intended to show you the example of the blueprints that pop in this specific space. Now, additionally, like I said at the beginning of the video, you can also do this on Damn Battlegrounds. And if you want to do it on Damn Battlegrounds, the steps are identical. You don't need to change the steps at all from what happened on Spaceport, but you just need to know where the Bastions spawn. The Bastions spawn in at the Pipeline Tower and down in the Hydrodome. Now, beyond all of that, I think that's everything I can give you for this specific challenge. Once you've stacked up enough Bastion eliminations and you're happy with your score, head back to Speranza, collect any loot if you haven't already, and watch your score fly up the leaderboard. That's going to be it for me today, y'all. Thanks for watching.